Hello, what's going on, everybody? All right, today we have got some very interesting pieces of the Karen Read retrial. We're going to talk about some inadvertent butt dials, some solo cups, some evasive answers. Why did Jen McCabe not get help from inside the house at 34 Fairview? Why doesn't anybody remember anything? Why doesn't anybody want to answer any of these questions? What is happening here? So we are going to get to that a whole lot more. There are some holes in the testimony today, some in memory, some in procedure. Let's get to it. So we are going to start with Jen McCabe's completing her cross-examination. And the first clip I have for you, so apparently, I'm not totally sure. Boston people, please let me know. Is the word nefarious just pronounced nefarious there, or do they both pronounce it incorrectly? I have never heard it pronounced nefarious, but I could be wrong. Here we say nefarious. So let's hear a little bit about what is so nefarious.
Correct.
And at that grand jury, you also left out the fact that you contacted your sister, correct?
There's nothing.
Actually, and I think I have this sped up, so let me come down just a little bit here.
There's nothing nefarious. I remembered who I called. I didn't go back and look at phone records.
I didn't say it was nefarious. Why would you use the word nefarious?
Because there's nothing about me calling my sister that is nefarious, and I feel like you're insinuating it might be, and it's not.
Did you use that word because it sounds nefarious?
No, I just used the word because I think that's how you're trying to portray something that is nothing.
Or did you use that word because you think that's how it's coming across? That's nefarious.
No.
Without contacting 34 Fairview.
No, not at all.
Okay, so that is regarding the fact that Jen McCabe had contacted her sister that morning before she ended up going in the house later. And then of course we got no, that's not nefarious. And he's like, I didn't say nefarious. I think he said nefarious. Why would you think it's nefarious? And she's like, well, I don't know. And so that's definitely, I think what we're seeing here now, this is the second trial. The jury knows that there's been a first trial at this point. They're trying not to say that, but the jury did not see trial one Jen McCabe. I did. Those of you who have only watched this trial, you may not have seen, trial one Jen McCabe either. So I don't think she came across, I think she came across a lot better in this trial. I'm very interested to know, those of you who have not watched trial one, how did you feel about her testimony? Did you find her credible? Things like that. Let me know for sure. Then we get into some of her text messages. So she calls her sister Nicole Albert, Brian Albert's wife, Coco. We talk about some of the text messages between her and Coco, and one of them is that she sends out, she says, Carrie, talking about Carrie Roberts, is talking to the police, but she kept it simple. And they go kind of back and forth about that. And then we also talk about some of her text messages in a group chat. So in this group chat are Brian Albert, her brother-in-law, Nicole Albert, her sister, and her husband, Matt McCabe. And so these group messages came out in the first trial, and they actually came in through Matt McCabe, her husband. I don't know if he's going to testify in this trial, so we will have to see if he ends up coming in at all. But there are some that are, they're not the best look in the world.
All right. It's from Brian Albert, and it's to myself, my sister Nicole, and Matt McCabe, my husband.
If you can orient us, please, and I won't do this with every single text, but orient us for the first text. What date and time is this text?
This is February 1st at 12:50.
So this is about 3 days after the event in question.
Yes.
12:50 noon.
Noon, yeah.
Just before 1 p.m.
Yes.
What does that text say?
Julie said Channel 4 is Zindini.
And that's from whom?
Brian.
So Brian Albert explain what that text means.
So Brian Albert is telling us that Julie told him Channel 4 is Zindini.
Who's Julie?
I'm sorry, Julie Albert.
Thank you. Let's go to the next text. Is this in response to the text that you just read?
Yes.
The prior text mentioned channel.
They talk here about what is D&E. It's a sub shop that Chris Albert owns. It's across the street from CF McCarthy's. They kind of go over that. It's just a pizza shop, sub shop kind of thing. We'll get now to the content of the text.
Thank you for that context. Ms. McCabe, can you read what this text says, who it's from and who it's to?
This is from Matt McCabe to myself, my sister Nicole, and Brian.
Can you read it for us, please?
Sure. Eating, I assume. Ask Chris to ask some questions. Tell them the guy never went into the house.
What does tell them the guy never went into the house mean to you? How did you take that?
I took that as John never came in the house.
Who's the guy?
John.
John O'Keefe.
Yes.
And the beginning of that sentence is tell them that the guy never came in the house, correct?
Yes.
And the sentence before that is ask Chris to ask some questions, correct?
Yes.
So this is Matt McCabe directing that Chris ask questions of Channel 4, correct?
I wouldn't say directing.
Whatever word you want to use. He was
No, I'm saying that Matt.
suggesting.
Yeah, I think we're all looking to find out what happened, so Matt was like, ask some questions. What do they know?
And also indicating that Chris should tell them the guy never came in the house, correct?
John never came in the house, correct?
Okay. Next text, please. Can you orient us who is this text from and who is it to?
Okay. This text is from Brian to myself, to Nicole, and to Matt.
Brian who?
Sorry, Brian Albert.
And this is in response to the text above that you just read, correct?
Yes.
Where Matt McCabe said, tell Chris to find out, get an update or something, and tell them that the guy never came in the house. This is
Yes.
in response to that text.
Yes.
And what does Brian Albert respond?
Exactly.
One word, correct?
Yes.
Next text, please.
Okay, so if Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe, now Brian and Nicole Albert do not claim to have been very close friends of John O'Keefe before this, but Jennifer McCabe says she was, and Matt McCabe in his testimony in the first trial refers to him as like, well, he was our friend and, you know, all this stuff. How do you feel about the verbiage, tell them the guy never came into the house? This is presumably to if it's media that's asking about it or police or whatever. Tell them the guy never came in the house. If this is somebody that you're close with, that you then spent all the next day with his family, his parents, and all of that kind of stuff, are you going to say, just refer to him as the guy? That seems like very distancing language to me. It did not sound good when we heard it the first time. I don't think it sounds good here either. But again, I don't know what the jury is picking up on when you don't have all of the other things that we had in the first trial. There's a lot they haven't gotten to in this trial yet, so let me know. They did talk about the Google searches. Now remember, the 2:27 a.m. Google search that is in question is "How long to die in the cold." She will not, this is where she gets really evasive too, where she's like, I don't know what I was doing at 2:27. He's like, well, you were, at the very least, you were Googling, because you're saying that you were Googling something different at 2:27, but the report says your 2:27 Google search is "How long to die in the cold." She's like, I don't remember what time I was Googling. I don't know. I don't know what time I was on Google. I don't remember. It's like, girl, you know. Girl, you know at 2:27 that's what you were doing. There's a question as to what it was, but you know that's what you were doing at 2:27, right? Like, why are you acting like you don't know? And Alan Jackson goes through this with her, like, you have been asked about this many, many, many times. She's like, yeah, about you. He's like, not just, or by you, not just by me. The police have talked to you about this. The DA's office has had to talk to you about that. Like, everybody's trying to figure out what it is. They brought in experts to testify just about this information. Like, you know, this is a big part of this. Why are you acting like you don't know? So she gets very, very evasive about things that, like, why? We know there was something on your phone happening at 2:27 a.m. So why are we going to pretend like we don't know that something was happening at 2:27 a.m.? It it did feel very distancing. And Miranda asked if I have covered this case before. I have not covered it on the main feed yet. Next week, though, look out for an overview of this case. So I've been covering the retrial here live on YouTube. So if you go to the live tab, you'll see the other ones that I've done. But just a general overview of the case is coming early next week. So be sure to check that out. It's going to drop here, and I'm going to drop it over on the podcast as well. And Kaylee says, yes, she feels like it sounds kind of distancing. I mean, I think so. If it's somebody you're close with, right? Tell them the guy. So then we talk about missed calls from Jen McCabe to John O'Keefe on his phone that night, early morning, when he was supposed to be coming into 34 Fairview. He never made it inside, right? So this is where we get more butt dials, okay? All right, if y'all have not watched the first trial, at this point, I'm not sure that they're going to call some of these other witnesses, so I don't know if we will get... if we're going to get the full picture of the butt dials, but let me set the scene for you on this. So lots of calls happen after everybody leaves the house at 34 Fairview the night of January 28th into the early morning hours of January 29th, 2022. Brian Albert owns the home, so he obviously stays there. Everybody else that had been there has left. They've gone home. Brian Higgins is a fellow law enforcement officer. He has an office at the Canton Police Department. He's friends with Brian Albert. He was there that night. He knows Karen. They had some flirty text messages, super cringe. We'll talk about them when they come up. But he leaves Brian Albert's house, and then he drives to Canton PD. He says to do some administrative work where he moves vehicles while he's drunk. Not what he is drunk, or he's been drinking. He's had like lots of whiskeys and stuff. They all have. They're all drinking and driving this night. And then he goes home where he drinks more. But there are phone calls between him and Brian Albert that night around like 1:30 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning, that kind of stuff. They both deny talking to each other after Brian Higgins leaves that night. They both say, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. We didn't talk. So when confronted with the phone records, they're like, well, there's a call from your phone to his phone. And they're like, well, that must have been a butt dial. Well, this one lasted 38 seconds or whatever. Well, it was probably a butt dial. But you answered it? You would have had to answer it, right? Like you would have had to pick up the phone for it to connect for 38 seconds. So now they're saying we have butt answers. Now we have butt dials, butt answers, and we have these all flying all over the place. There's an epidemic of butt dials in Canton, Massachusetts. My question for anybody who lives in Canton PD, are your butts made different? What does your butts do with phones? There's something happening there. Do your butts have fingers? Because we've got Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, apparently Nicole Albert is also either having butt dials or butt answers, because there are calls between her and Jen McCabe that appear to be answered that neither of them say they talk to each other. But then we've got that night where Jen's texting him, are you here? You can park behind me, all that kind of stuff. After that, there are 7 missed calls from Jen McCabe to John O'Keefe's phone. And what is her answer for that? Those must have been inadvertent calls. As far as we know, none of them went to voicemail. There was nothing on direct or cross that said, and you left him a voicemail during any of these calls, or it went to voicemail. Like, because if you think about like a butt dial, if it just keeps going, eventually its voicemail picks up, and then you would also leave an inadvertent voicemail, right? But as far as what has come out in trial, we don't have any of that. Also, I'm sorry guys, I have an ice pack on my old lady hip right now. It's hurting me. So that's why I look like I'm in pain, because I am. So we don't have any voicemails. We don't have what you would think would have happened. And the other interesting thing, now Alan Jackson asks this question, are you aware that those missed calls show up on John O'Keefe's cell phone extraction, but they don't show up on yours? And that is objected to. And I don't think she answers it because it's not in evidence necessarily, but the question is out there. It doesn't show up on her phone extraction. And we will talk about that when we get to the cell phone expert on day, I believe she testified on day 11. So we'll get to her and her explanation for that. But it's interesting. That is very interesting. Now, Jen McCabe had previously testified that on January the 29th, after, they did everything at the scene, they did all kinds of stuff, right? They went to John O'Keefe's home where his mom, Peggy O'Keefe, was. Like, she was there to be with the family and, like, comfort them and, that kind of stuff. So on cross, now what she says is they went directly from the O'Keefe family to drop this girl off, which is Sergeant Lank's daughter. So they're all going to go drop her off, and then that's when they hang out at Lank's for a little bit outside. Jen maybe goes in to use the restroom. She can't remember if she went inside the house or not, but they only talked to Lank's wife, blah, blah, blah. Well, Alan Jackson brings up, well, wait a second, that's not actually how that happened. You left the O'Keefe residence, and you went to 34 Fairview, and then you went to your house, and then you went to Lank's house. And she's like, oh, whoops, forgot about that, whatever. She's like, we just drove by Fairview. We didn't go there. He's like, well, what did you do there then? She's like, oh, I don't know. I think we just would have wanted to, like, drive by and just kind of look at it. I mean, we slowed down when we drove by, but we didn't do anything. We just, like, slowed down for a minute. But the GPS data, the location data, says that they were there for like 4 to 5 minutes. That doesn't feel like you just slowly rolled by. And he's like, are you sure you didn't stop and like talk to your sister or talk to Brian? And she's like, no, we didn't stop at all. So that was kind of like, okay, dude, like we have that information. And if you did stop, then just say you stopped and like say why. So 4 to 5 minutes is not... That's not a we just rolled by, we slowly drove by. That's not what that is. So that comes out in cross. And Alan Jackson does seem, which Miranda said all I can think of is like Alan Jackson, like Hoochie Coochie, which, yes, Chattahoochee. Different Alan Jackson, but both great Allens. But he seems to be like, you mean to tell me you sat in the car in blizzard conditions with it? What did you leave it running? And like, blah, blah, blah. They're like, yeah. And he's like, but it's like really cold outside. Isn't it dark outside? Like, he's obviously from California. They don't be doing the snow there. But in my mind, he thought it was weird that they stayed in the car, and they sit in the car for 45 minutes. I, as a mom, if my kids are in the house, I can completely understand that. Like just sitting in the car and being like, the kids aren't out here, so maybe let's just talk out here. I can completely see that. He thought it was weird. He also thought it was weird that like, but it was really cold outside. Why would you sit out there? But these are northern folks. Snow don't mean nothing to them. An inch down here, everything's closed. They're living their normal life. So then they go through the timeline of the morning using the dash cam video. So Jen McCabe, remember, calls 911 at 6:03 in the morning, and the officers / first responders arrive at 6:10. Now, he's kind of leading this up. Minutes are crucial during this time. Seconds are crucial. Like, John O'Keefe is fighting for his life at this point. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, well, did you know anybody on Fairview Road that would have known CPR? She's like, you mean at the time? He's like, yeah, at the time and now. Who did you know? He was like, you know what? Not even on the road. Not even on Fairview Road. What about on the property? Who that would have already been on the property of 34 Fairview Road? No CPR and could render first aid to somebody who needs help. Oh, yeah, my brother-in-law, Brian Albert. Right. So then why did you not go inside and ask him to come out and help you? And she's like, my thoughts were only with John. I was just trying to help John. I don't know. And look, I guess I don't know what I would do in that situation. Thank God I have never been in that situation. So I'm not saying that anything nefarious is the reason that she did not go inside, but She herself testified, and everybody else testified, that anywhere that you drove that morning, it was going to take longer because of the snow, because of the whiteout conditions, because of this blizzard. So you knew that that ambulance was going to take longer. And when somebody needs help immediately, a minute feels way too long, right? So then why would you be just there waiting? Because right now it's you, Karen, and Carrie. You guys are saying Karen's hysterical. She's no help. Carrie is doing the best she can, but she's not an expert in this. You don't know how to do this. You guys are getting blankets out of Carrie's car to try to warm him up. There's a house right there. You could walk in. And she's like, I just didn't even think to go get them. I didn't even think about it. I was just trying to help John. And she was like, that would have taken precious seconds away from helping John. And okay, but it took them 6 minutes to get to him, when Brian Albert could have come down in 1 to 2 minutes, right? Like, it's not a big yard. It is as big as your mama's Jack Russell. It's a tiny, tiny yard. It's not like she had to walk a mile, it's not like one of those long ass driveways or anything. It's just very interesting. He does point out too at this point that after she called 911, she made 2 more phone calls, both of those to her sister Nicole, who did not answer. And she's like, yeah, but those phone calls weren't important to me. Cause he's like, why did you not just go in the house and check on them? Cause he was like, he starts asking they don't turn their lights on. You guys have all said Karen is screaming so much that your husband, Matt, said when she was at your house, she's going to wake the neighbors, make her shut up. So were you not concerned then that Brian and Nicole, they don't turn a light on, there's no movement inside the house, you've called them now, you can't get a hold of them? What if something happened to them? There's somebody dead or dying on their front lawn. Are they in danger? She's like, no, I knew they weren't in danger. Well, how did you know that? Because whatever happened out here had nothing to do with inside the house, because he didn't come inside the house. Okay, but you still didn't know. You didn't know why they weren't. You've called her now twice, so were you not concerned? And she's like, no, I knew it had nothing to do with it. She ends on no, because Karen was, because Alan's like, well, how did you know that what happened, that anything inside the house had nothing to do with out here? How did you know that what happened out here had nothing to do with inside there? Because you have to think too, at one point, I don't know, maybe just true crime people, we might think this way, but John O'Keefe is an officer. Brian Albert is an officer. Has somebody decided to attack police officers? Did somebody do something to John O'Keefe out here and then they walked inside and did something to them inside? I've covered cases where, it's wrong place, wrong time. People become collateral damage when the target is somebody else. Maybe the target was John, but something happened to Brian and Nicole. Maybe the target was Brian and something, you don't know that, and you can't get a hold of her. So nobody thought, not even the police, they didn't think to go knock on the door and make sure that the people inside were okay. Why? It doesn't make any sense. Brendan on redirect does get out that there were no sirens from her. He asked, okay, Brian and Nicole didn't come out, but did any of the other neighbors come out? And she was like, no, nobody came out. So, okay. That is a good point. Cause it does sound really strange that the 2 of them didn't come out, but you would think people on the other, around would have come out too. And apparently nobody else did. He does ask her, what was your state of mind on 1/29/22? She's like, I was in shock. It was all a blur, all that kind of stuff, which I'm sure it was. And he says, well, you never refused to answer any questions of law enforcement, did you? And she's like, no. And it's like, well, but Brennan, she already testified that the FBI came to ask her questions. And she told him she needed 10 minutes to get ready and brush her teeth or whatever. And in that 10 minutes, she made 5 phone calls and disclosed only 2 of them to the FBI until later when she called to fix that. But she ended that interview early. So that's not, she hasn't always been forthcoming. It's like that movie Together. Do you always love your brother? she doesn't always love her brother, right? Like we don't always answer the questions. He does ask her if she was wearing an Apple Watch, and I thought this was interesting, and I'm not sure where he's going with this. He says, what was your heart rate like that morning when you found John? She's like, I was anxious, my heart rate was elevated, all that kind of stuff. He says, okay, and what would your heart rate have been when you were going to bed the night before, when you were Googling stuff or whatever? And she says, oh, I was relaxed, I was getting ready to go to bed. I don't know if he's going to bring up her Apple Health data, which he refers to as healthcare data, and look at the difference between her heart rate during those 2 times or something. I'm not totally sure where that's going, but he did say that. He asked her, why did you go back to 34 Fairview that day before going to Lank's house? She's like, oh, I'm not really sure. I think we just kind of wanted to like look around or whatever. And he's like, okay. He then reads some of her texts with her sister, with Carrie Roberts, with some other friend, that go to her state of mind, where she is saying stuff like, I'm just so sick to my stomach. I just keep seeing him in the snow. Carrie could have been saying some of this too. Just how they were devastated that this was really difficult. They were talking about being devastated for the O'Keefe family because of this, that things are all a blur, that kind of stuff. She does explain the Carrie kept it simple text as it was a really long day for Carrie. She had been drinking wine by that point. She said she just kind of kept it short with detectives, essentially. So that is the end of Jen McCabe's testimony. And then we get to day 9. So the toxicologist testifies, and this is her here, and her name is Hannah Knowles. She's in the little over there. Ryan is my next person that I'm going to bring up. So I just wanted you to see what she looks like. But she testified about Karen Reed's retrograde blood draw. So basically what happened was they didn't arrest Karen for a DUI that day or anything like that. She didn't do a breathalyzer at the time, like none of that kind of stuff. They tested her blood at the hospital, or they took her blood at the hospital the next day at like 9 o'clock in the morning. And that was just because she had been sectioned because she had made suicidal comments and her dad was worried about her. So they'd brought her for an evaluation. So they took blood because of that. So the DA's office later had the toxicologist do a retrograde blood draw. So they said, take the blood from 9 in the morning, assume the last drink was 12:45 a.m., and then see what the blood alcohol level would have been. And so she came up with a 0.14 to a 0.28. And they even, Lally does this direct, and he even is like, is it important to get the time of the last drink correct? And like, why is that important and all that? And would it affect things if that was the incorrect time of the last drink? And it's like, okay, well, they use the 12:45 a.m. time that they gave to this toxicologist is what they said was the time of the accident in the first trial. 12:45 is an incorrect time regardless because she was already back home then. Do we know if she went back home and drank more? If she did, that kind of blows this out of the water a little bit. However, is any of this really that big of a deal? Because in all of these clips that she's talking about from these different media interviews, she talks about drinking that night. And she even says in some of them, I probably shouldn't have been driving. So that doesn't look good either. So I don't know that the toxicologist thing is really going to be that big of a deal because it seems pretty clear, even from her own words, that she was drinking. She probably shouldn't have been driving. So I don't know how much that really did. So next is Ryan Nagel, who is here. And this is the brother of Julie Nagel. So Julie Nagel was at 34 Fairview the night that everything happened. And he came to 34 Fairview at one point with his friend and his girlfriend. At the time, they are broken up now. He makes that very clear. My ex. Which, I mean, is fine. Like, they are exes, so it's fine. It was just kind of funny. But they all drive there together. So they're in a pickup truck, a Ford F-150, I believe. The driver's name is Ricky. We didn't hear from him last trial. I don't know that we'll hear from him this trial. But he was the driver. But Ryan was there too. They were going to pick up Julie, his sister. So he says they drive to 34 Fairview to pick Julie up. Yannetti does this cross, by the way. They see Karen Reed and John O'Keefe in the SUV at a stop sign. So, like, they're at a stop sign this way. The SUV is at a stop sign this way. So, they're each going to turn the same way, but one of them is going to turn right. One of them is going to turn left to go down 34 Fairview. He says Karen is not driving recklessly at this time. She's using turn signals. She's not driving erratically. Like, there was nothing that flagged them like, oh, this person is super drunk or anything like that. It did not seem that whoever was driving that vehicle was out of sorts to the point that, like, they weren't veering off the road. So that kind of messes with the Commonwealth's thing of like, well, she must have just been so drunk that she had no idea that she did it. That she just ran, reversed into him by accident or something, didn't know it, but she was just so drunk she had no idea what was going on. She made it home. Like, she didn't get a DUI, she didn't get pulled over, like all that kind of stuff. But he says it did not look unsafe driving to me. Now, should she have been driving? No. Do I condone that? No. She should not have driven that night. 100% she shouldn't have driven that night. None of them should have. But here we are. So that kind of, I don't know how the jury will feel about that. Like, oh, well, it seemed like she was driving safely then. If they can't prove that she knew she hit him, then might be harder to prove that she didn't know that she hit him if she was just so drunk she had no idea what was happening, right? So she parks kind of along the street. He pulls into the driveway. And he says he thinks they're waiting for about 5 minutes or so. Julie comes out, and then she's kind of trying to decide, am I going to go? Am I going to stay? Should I leave with you guys? Why don't you guys come in and have a drink? And they're like, no, we don't want to stay and have a drink and all that kind of stuff. So we will hear Brennan talk to him a little bit about what he saw as he is there going to pick up his sister.
Ask you some questions about the entire time you were parked at the foot of the driveway until the point that you left Fairview. From when you first stopped at the driveway at Fairview until the point that you left and were no longer in front of that property, did you ever see any person get out of that SUV that was in front of you?
No, I did not, sir.
Did you ever see anybody, any man, ever cross the front yard towards that home?
No, I did not, sir.
Did you ever see any man ever enter or stand in that front door?
No, I did not, sir.
Did you ever see anybody walk across the front yard to the side door?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No, I did not, sir.
Did you ever see anybody enter that side door other than your sister?
No, I did not, sir.
As you were parked at the driveway the entire time, that generally 5-minute time, did you ever see anybody get out of the SUV and walk down the street towards the driveway?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No, I did not, sir.
Did you ever see anybody walk past your truck and up the driveway?
No, I did not, sir.
Did you ever see any person other than your sister outside of those vehicles the entire time that you were at Fairview?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No, I did not, sir.
Okay, so what do we think? Does that help the Commonwealth that Ryan doesn't see them at all? I think Brennan thinks it's helping, but then when we get to what he says about what he saw inside the car on cross, I'm not sure how helpful it is, because if Ryan Nagel during this time, by the way, Ryan gets there and is possibly there during the time that they think the collision may have happened or just before it. Like the timing is very close together, within minutes. So if he never sees John get out of the car, if he never sees John in the yard, if he never sees John walk past him in the driveway, if he never sees John walk inside the house, if he never sees John walk outside of the house, if he never sees John at the door or at the it's like, then where else are we presuming him to be? The Commonwealth says he's still in the car. He hasn't gotten out yet. But then Yannetti gets up to cross him. And I will also point out that Ryan Nagel, I find to be very credible. His demeanor doesn't change from direct cross. He just answers the questions the way that he knows them. He doesn't appear to shy away from any answers. Not that anything he really says, looks bad for him or anything like that, but it really feels like he does not have any reason to make any kind of comments that would lean one way or the other. He is literally just answering questions. But we are going to hear what he says Oh, actually, okay, this is a super short clip, but Yannetti kind of chose violence here when he asks Ryan about dealing with his sister.
Come in and have a drink.
You have testified in the past that Julie can be kind of a pain in the ass, correct?
I mean, all siblings can be, yeah.
He just was like, but you did testify that your sister can be kind of a pain in the ass, right? He was like, yeah, all siblings are. But he was frustrated because Julie was like coming in and out, and like he felt like the back and forth he said was really unnecessary, where she's like, she specifically asked him to come pick her up, and he goes all the way there with his friends and girlfriend, and then he gets there, and then she's like, well, why don't you guys stay, and I'm not ready to leave yet. And he's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I came over here to pick you up. No, I don't want to do that. And then she's like, okay. He's like, well, are you going to come with us or not? She's like, yeah, let me go check. So he seemed quite frustrated about that, which was just kind of funny that Yannetti was like, well, you said she was a pain in the ass, right? He's like, I mean, all siblings can be, but now we will talk about what he saw in the vehicle.
Seats, correct, they were on.
Yes. Okay. So you could see both seats in the front driver's
I
compartment.
couldn't
correct?
see.
And he's saying the dome light in the car is on, so that it is illuminating the entire front seat.
Past the woman.
Well, you only saw one.
I only
person.
saw a woman. Sorry to interrupt you. Yes.
No problem. It allowed you to see into that front compartment.
Yes.
All right. And you saw one person inside the car at that time.
Correct, sir.
It was a woman with long hair in the driver's seat, correct?
Correct, sir.
And she looked like she was alone.
Yes.
You didn't see anybody else in the SUV.
No, I did not, sir.
You certainly didn't see a 6'1" man in the SUV in the passenger seat, correct?
Correct, sir.
In fact, you saw that the passenger seat was empty.
Correct.
So if the passenger seat is empty, and he wasn't on the stand all that long. So Brennan's like, but you didn't see John walk inside. You didn't see John standing outside. You didn't see John here. You didn't see John there. You didn't see John anywhere. Like, that is still kind of, at least for me, it was still hanging in the air. I was paying attention to that. And then Ryan Nagel says, well, she was the only one in the car. I did not see a second person in the car at all. The passenger seat was empty. And he had testified that John had been sitting in the passenger seat when they were driving to Fairview. When they see each other at that stop sign, it's a woman driving and a man sitting in the passenger seat. At this point, there is no man in the passenger seat.
The woman in the passenger seat was staring straight ahead, correct?
Not in the passenger seat. She
I'm
was
sorry,
in the driver's seat.
thank you for catching that. The woman in the driver's seat was staring straight ahead.
That is correct, sir.
You didn't see her lips moving as if she were talking, correct?
I wasn't looking for that.
you
Just happened
did-
to see a woman figure with her hands like this.
Okay. Facing straight.
Correct, sir.
You had no music on in Ricky's truck at that time, correct?
No, sir.
Ricky had turned the music down when Julie came out so that you could actually speak to her, correct?
That is correct, sir.
And when you got close to that SUV while you were passing it, you didn't hear any arguing there, correct?
Correct.
You didn't hear any yelling, correct?
No, I did not.
You didn't hear any screaming?
No, I did not.
You heard no noises within that SUV at all?
No, I did not, sir.
So he also says, I don't hear any fighting. I don't hear any yelling. I don't hear anything. And they had their window down when they were in the driveway as well. So if Karen and John had been arguing at that point, what Brendan is trying to get to in his direct with him, or his redirect when he talks to him, is, he may have said it in the direct anyway. One of the things that Brendan says, well, one possibility, like, how does the dome light turn on? And he's like, well, when you stop the car or whatever, or if a door is open. So I think Brendan is trying to get at that this is the moment that you guys pull out of the driveway and you're driving away and you go past the car sitting there on the street, that is, the dome light is on because John O'Keefe the door is still open. He's standing on the other side. You just can't see him. So yeah, the passenger seat is empty, but he's standing outside, and this is the moment. He drives away. John O'Keefe gets out of the car, and they drive away. He's going to go to walk in, but they're fighting, and then she pulls forward and then reverses. Like, it's all happening, like, momentarily is basically what he's kind of getting at. The next person to testify is firefighter paramedic Katie McLoughlin. She looked like she could not have been more bothered to be there. Oh, and I'm sorry. We do have a couple of other, like, Sarah Levinson was there. His ex-girlfriend Heather testifies as well. They really didn't give much other testimony other than what Ryan Nagel said, so I'm not going to focus there. But Katie McLoughlin, here, that's a really bad pause, but she looked bothered as hell to be there. Her cross-examination did not go well last time. I guess I can see why she wasn't too stoked, but anyway, she was just like, yes, no, yeah, like she seemed so bothered. When on direct, when asking what could have caused John's injuries, she said that Karen repeated, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. She said Jen McCabe was next to her when Katie had asked, firefighter McLoughlin, had asked what happened or what led to these injuries or something like that. And that's when Karen says, I hit him, hit him, hit him. Jen McCabe was right next to her when this happened. An officer was also next to them. This is Officer Seraph, who was the first responding officer. McLoughlin says Seraph heard her say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Jen is like, what are you saying? Stop saying that. That's crazy. Officer Seraph says, what did you say? And she says, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And then he goes, go get Goody. And he goes over to get Sergeant Good, who's his supervisor, to come over because he was so concerned about it. This is what she says. Brennan says, well, did you get any more information? Did you ask any follow-up questions? Like, I hit him with what or whatever? And she's like, no. And he's like, why? And she says, well, it was a disturbing scene. I didn't really feel comfortable. That wasn't my job. It wasn't my place to like get that information. And he actually asks her, could that information have helped you in your treatment of John? And that was one thing that I couldn't understand. All of these first responders are saying, oh, she keeps saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And we don't know what she's talking about. And everybody thinks she's crazy and like all this stuff. And it's like, well, that would have helped your treatment, right? Hit him with what? Did you hit him with a baseball bat in the face? Okay, then we'll look into that. You hit him with a vehicle? Okay, we need to look into that. You hit him with a claw hammer? We need to look at that. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would you not ask that? Why would you not ask the follow-up question so that you can help then the treatment? Because right now you do not know why he is in the snow. You don't know what happened to him. But you have somebody running around, you say, who keeps saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And you don't ask any follow-up questions because it's not your job. And he says, would that not have helped your treatment? And she says, I mean, it could have. But, you know, basically it wasn't my job. She said what my job was to get the information from people and then go and give it to firefighter Nuttall and Flamati, who were working on John in the ambulance at the time. So they were the ones doing the life-saving measures. I was supposed to go get information, you know, some of the information that might be helpful. Is he a drug user? Is he, does he have any health problems we need to know about? Does he have any heart conditions? Like that kind of stuff. But what she got out of her when she said what happened was, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And then she just says, okay. And she walks away and goes to the ambulance is what she says. They do go ahead and talk about how she knows Caitlin Albert, Brian Albert's daughter, who happens to live at 34 Fairview at the time. They went to high school together. They are friends of friends. Like they have mutual friends. They've gone on even like some weekend getaway kind of things. They've been at events together, but like they don't have a one-on-one relationship kind of thing. That was a big deal in the last trial because she severely downplayed that. Last trial, when asked how she knew Caitlin Albert on cross, it didn't come out in direct. She said, I went to high school with somebody named that, and like that's not the same thing. So it was really weird. Alan Jackson did some impeachment on that in the last trial. We're not going to get that in this trial because they're just talking about it on direct. So it's, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Brennan then has her walk through the dash cam footage of the moment that Karen tells her that she hit John O'Keefe, she says, because they actually have they're standing in front of Officer Seraph's vehicle, which has dash cam on it. So she's like, here's Karen, here's Jen, here's Officer Seraph, Sergeant Good comes over. What's interesting about that is we don't have body cam. None of the Canton had body cam at that time, but we have the footage where she says this is exactly where it happened. And it matches what Jen says about when it happened. But nobody looks bothered at all. They let Karen just walk away. She walks off frame. The officer maybe seems to turn toward her somewhat, but he doesn't seem to engage at all. He does talk to Sergeant Good, but they don't appear to talk to Karen in any way. They don't stop her. They don't look like, whoa, what's going on? Like, it doesn't seem like anything is flagging them to do anything else. They don't. They let Karen leave the scene that morning. So that's very interesting. So then we get to cross, and Alan Jackson brings back up that dash cam footage, and he wants to go through that again. You were here. This was a blah, blah, blah. So then he says, he kind of brings that up. Why is nobody acting like anything significant is happening? Why are we just kind of walking off frame? Like nothing seems, nobody arrests her. Nobody puts her in the back of a vehicle and says, you're coming with us. You hit this man with a vehicle. Like nothing like that. He also asked though, well, wait a second. Where were firefighters Flamati and Nuttall? And she says, well, they're in the back of the ambulance at this time. And he says, they're working on John. She's like, yeah. He says, are the doors of the ambulance closed? Yes. And the engine is running? Yes. Could they have heard what you are saying that my client said to you? And she's like, I mean, they were in the ambulance. I don't know what they heard, but basically, no, they couldn't. Now, their testimony, they've already testified in this trial. They both said that they heard this happen. They heard this encounter, and they heard Karen say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, to firefighter Katie McLoughlin. But if they were in the back of the ambulance at the time, they couldn't have. Like, why? Why? Why even? What I am wondering about is, because I just can't imagine that all of these people would just get up here and lie. Have they heard it so many times from other people that it's just becoming part of their memory now? Like, oh yeah, I heard her say that too. You say you heard it, I heard it too. It doesn't appear in any reports. None of the police officers there seem to say anything about it. They certainly didn't report it to anybody when they do all the handoffs or anything like that. It's just very strange. Alan Jackson gets back to, why did Officer Seraph not seem to really care that she says, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, that kind of thing. And she says, well, you'd have to talk to him about that. I don't know. Because he says, he didn't write that in any of his reports. It doesn't seem like, and you say he's standing right there. He heard it. Oh yeah, he definitely heard it. Well, then why would that not be in his report? And she's like, well, you'll have to talk to him about that. He's like, we have. And she goes, yeah, well, you should. And it was kind of a little like, that's not great. So then we get to Lieutenant Gallagher, and he is at this point retired Lieutenant Gallagher, and he is the person. He's the hell person who, oh my gosh, I put that exactly where I wanted it. I've never done that before. That's incredible. Okay. He's the hell person who decided to do the leaf blower. So he responded to the scene. He made the decision to use the leaf blower to unearth evidence in the snow. It was also his decision to use the red Solo cups to collect biological evidence. I wish I was kidding, and I'm not. And also to use the Stop and Shop bag rather than an evidence bag, Stop and Shop grocery bag, to bring the evidence that he found back to the police department. That is retired Lieutenant Paul Gallagher. Now we're going to hear him talk about the whole snowblower situation and how he thought other people might think that was pretty weird too.
You were telling us about the leaf blower. Did it serve to excavate the area?
It did.
Did you begin that process?
I did.
And when you did that, did you try to memorialize it?
Yes, I did.
How did you do that?
I had Sergeant Good videotape it.
Why did you have Sergeant Good memorialize your efforts to excavate the area?
I thought someone may wonder why I decided to use a leaf blower, so I wanted to demonstrate its effectiveness.
I'm going to move to introduce two videos that council has.
So there's no objection to these videos, right?
No objection.
Exhibit 51.
With the court's permission, can I show the Could you, Ms. Gilman, stop at the end of the video so it's a still frame? That's good right there. Sir, who's the person holding the leaf blower?
That is me.
Did the leaf blower work as you had hoped?
It was great.
It was great. What do you guys think about that? He literally brought a snowblower over. It was like some neighbor's snowblower, I believe. He was using that to unearth evidence. But it worked great, he said. So, I don't know. I have seen people talk about this case, and whether you think she's guilty or you think she's innocent, the investigation in this case was abysmal. There is literally no getting around that. You can argue about it all day long if you want to. You can say it was a good investigation. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't have an affinity for Karen Reed in any way whatsoever. This is a bad investigation, and we are just getting started. But the fact, the leaf blower doesn't bother me near as much as some of the other stuff. But I just want to know how you guys feel about a leaf blower unearthing evidence in a now homicide trial. First of all, Canton PD did not have to do this. He could have waited for crime scene to come out and do this. He chose to start leaf blowing. He said that he had tried to put up crime scene tape, but it was so windy it wouldn't stay up, so the scene wasn't macked anymore, all that kind of stuff. The snow was not everything was going to stay there. He says, there wasn't much traffic on the road. People weren't walking around. People weren't traipsing around. Like, you could have put something there to mark it off, secure it in some way, and just have a trooper or an officer park there and wait to secure the scene, make sure that it's okay, and then wait for crime scene to get out there if you're going to unearth all of this evidence. The reason he decided that he needed to unearth evidence was because he saw red droplets of blood in the snow, and he ends up with the leaf blower unearthing a broken drinking glass. And so there's stuff there, right? Kendra says he was so confident in his incompetence. He continues he brought his audacity with him to court. He sure did. He says that he talked to Brian Albert and Jen McCabe inside the Albert home. Brennan says, was anything concerning in that conversation? And he says, no, it was just a social conversation, which I thought was strange because should it be a social conversation? Like, what do you mean by that? Were you just like, how's your mom and them? Which I guess they wouldn't say that because that's the country way to say it. But it shouldn't have been a social conversation. Surely to goodness you were talking about the case that you were there to investigate. I thought that was strange. But anyway, nothing concerning. He says just a social conversation. He was asked, did you look around the house that morning? Was anything out of place? He says, yeah, I looked around. He says, this is what he says. I didn't look around just with my eyes. He said he looked toward the kitchen area and nothing was out of place. Then the state police end up taking over the investigation, and he says, you guys, if you didn't watch the first trial, this is not going to hit you the way that it hit me quite yet, but I think it will hit you later. So put a pin in it if you've only seen the first trial, or if you've only seen the second trial. But he says, Brennan says, why did you guys recuse yourselves? And he says, well, we had to recuse ourselves because our best detective, Kevin Albert, do you recognize the last name there, by the way? Our best detective, Kevin Albert, is the brother of the homeowner. So that's Brian Albert. So Brian Albert works for Boston PD. Kevin Albert works for Canton PD. He's a detective there. Their best. Please put a pin in that, because when you hear what their best detective does, it's going to blow your mind. Then we get to cross-examination. He was not interviewed by anyone in the Massachusetts State Police having to do with this case whatsoever until April of 2024, which was when the first trial was beginning. He was interviewed by Lally, the DA at the time. And nobody ever asked him, apparently, any questions regarding anything in this case, even though he was the one to discover the first pieces of evidence at the scene until April of 2024. This happened in January of 2022. Now we're going to get to... Gotta get a little further. We're going to get to some Michael Proctor stuff.
Who's Michael Proctor?
He was one of the troopers assigned to investigate the case.
As a matter of fact, he was the lead investigator for the case, correct?
I don't know if he was lead or trooper mechanic. I don't know.
As you sit here, you don't know that Michael Proctor was the lead case agent for...
I know he was one of them, yes.
Okay. Do you know that he was the lead investigator assigned to the case?
I don't. I had nothing to do with the DA's office.
Right. I know you didn't have...
I don't know how they assign their cases, counsel. I don't know what you want me to say. I can't say what I don't know.
Mr. Gallagher, I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking if...
I did not know he was lead. I know he was one of the leads.
Okay.
I believe they do it in a tandem, but I'm not sure.
Okay. He may have had a partner, correct?
That is correct, yes.
But it's not unusual to have a lead case agent, the person who's responsible for most of the search warrant writing and the memorialization of and documentation of evidence collection and the movement of evidence and booking into evidence, things like that.
That is correct, but I don't know anything about who wrote their affidavits or who logged their evidence in. I wouldn't know that.
You're also familiar with Yuri Buchanan, correct?
I know who he is.
You're also familiar with Lieutenant Tully?
I know, yes.
They're all Massachusetts State Police officers, correct?
Yes, they all are.
Did Michael Proctor interview you before?
Okay, so he really dances around that like, okay, guys, it's not contested that Michael Proctor was the lead investigator on this case. As far as I know, and I've watched every freaking thing on this case that you can watch, including the first trial and every hearing in between. It's not contested that Michael Proctor was the lead investigator. He's fired now. He's been disgraced. He did a shit-ass job, which obviously they don't want to have to talk about. But this is just the first of many witnesses in law enforcement being like, well, I don't know, would you call him the lead? I didn't make the decision. I didn't do it. I didn't tell her. I didn't do it. I don't know how they have, do they do it together? I don't know. Like, he just asked you, was Michael Proctor the lead on this case? That's a yes or no. This whole that you did where he's like, I don't make the decisions. I didn't do it. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't know. Why are you asking me? That's very strange. That's very strange. It's super weird. Let's see. Joe says, I hope defense has a Lexus. Auto expert this time around. Or maybe says Alexis cannot reach 24.5 miles and 62 feet, nowhere near that on this planet. I work on and maintain these vehicles. It is impossible. Very interesting. Well, and also, wouldn't there be more, I mean, what do we know? But wouldn't there be more damage to the vehicle and damage to the person if you hit somebody going 24 miles an hour like that? There's a lot of what is happening with that in particular. So yes, I agree with you. I hope they've got some good evidence there. Lieutenant Gallagher, when asked, did he write any reports of anything that he did at the scene? His answer was basically, why would I? I'm the supervisor. I supervise. I don't write reports. That's for other people to do. But apparently, like Alan Jackson says, okay, but protocol would be, yeah, if you just show up to the scene and you're supervising it, that yes, you know, because he's like, well, part of my job is make sure all the reports are written and people are doing their job and like blah, blah, blah. He's like, okay, I get that. He's like, I don't write the reports myself. He's like, but if you yourself are the one who is uncovering the evidence, then you would then write a report about that, right? He's like, no, why would I do that? No, why? Why would I do that? It's an interesting, he does a lot of absolutely not. It's weird. So he uncovers that broken drinking glass and the blood in the snow. When asked what he did to preserve the scene, he said, well, there were no civilians that could have trampled all over the scene or anything like that. So that's taken care of. Even though, like, as far as we know, they didn't tell the homeowner not to come out and do anything. They don't have anybody there making sure that nobody can do anything. Karen and Carrie and Jen had been there walking all around, right? So, like, okay. And they collected evidence and they searched it. So what else were they supposed to do? Nobody who then investigated the case actually saw where John O'Keefe's body was that morning. And so they just kind of like Seraph and Good passed it along to Gallagher and Lank, I think, who then passed it along to like Proctor and his team. So by the time it gets to Proctor and his team, who they are then going to give that information to the accident reconstructionist that they use, they don't have anybody who actually saw where John was. They just have the officers who are telling everybody where they remember, and then they're passing that down a few times. Oh, sorry, I had to adjust there. Nobody was made. Okay, so then he goes back out to the scene with Michael Proctor and some other people. They said from the CARS team, that's their accident reconstruction team, I guess, their plan was that they were going to put a drone up in the air and they were going to kind of measure the area that way, because it had never really been measured, I don't think, before. They certainly didn't have anything marked out where John was, where they expected to find debris, where the car had been, like none of that stuff, where they, any of that kind of stuff. Anything that an accident reconstructionist would have been able to use. So they were supposed to go put a drone up in the air, but he says they actually weren't able to do that because it's too close to the airport. You're not allowed to do that, FAA regulations or whatever. So they didn't end up doing that. But when they got out there, he was the one that went, not Good, not Seraph, who actually saw where John was. Gallagher went out with them. He said to tell them where John's body had been approximately, and also to manage if any of the neighbors came out and wanted to ask questions or something, which I was like, why is neighbor control so important here when nobody came out when Karen was screaming bloody murder that morning? Like, it's just, I don't know. But I was like, okay, fine. So nobody was made aware that he had done this until that April 2024 interview where they talked to him about that, and that was finally documented. Trooper Tully actually put that in a report that day, and Trooper Tully is over Trooper Buchanan, who's over Michael Proctor. So, Officer Seraph never reported any statements that supposedly he would have heard or would have been made by Karen Reed that morning when he arrived on scene. He didn't tell Gallagher. He didn't notate it anywhere, anything like that. When asked why nobody went back to the station for proper evidence containers, Lieutenant Gallagher says, well, that would have taken too long, because remember, at this point, what they've used is, instead of like sterile containers to put the blood evidence in and like use DNA swabs or, the little vials or anything that have lids and stuff on them, they have used red Solo cups from a neighbor's garage, I believe. And we are going to hear his reasoning for this, because I guess if you reason it, uh-oh. What happened there?
No,
Oh, okay. I don't know why I did that. I need to come up a little bit. Okay. So he says basically it would have taken too long to get back to the police department. I needed to be there, blah, blah, blah. And so Alan is listing other people off, and he's like, well, this person could have gone. This person could have gone. He's like, no, they didn't have access. No, they couldn't have done it. No, they didn't.
A phone call?
no, nobody there would have had access at that time. It was only Officer Dever on the desk.
So you're the only person that could have gotten those swabs?
Sergeant Lang could have gotten them as well.
So Sergeant Lang could have too?
Sure.
But you didn't say that?
No, definitely didn't.
Okay. What you did do, however, is you went to the neighbor's house. Happened to be Tom Kellerman, right?
The lieutenant of detectives, yes.
Right. And Lieutenant Gallagher gave you red Solo cups.
Yes. I asked for plastic or glass containers. He had Solo cups, and I utilized them.
The same kind of Solo cups that we all see at backyard barbecues.
Yep, they hold liquid terrifically.
They're also not sealed, correct?
They are not.
They're also not used normally. I mean, they were here. They're not normally used for evidence collection, correct?
Oh, absolutely not.
And then you decided you needed to transport that very important biological material back to Canton PD for storage and safety.
Are they normally used for evidence collection? Absolutely not. But they are fantastic for holding liquids, and he's not wrong. I have held many a liquid in a red Solo cup. You better bet your ass I have. But for blood evidence collection at a scene, when you have sterile vials 10 minutes away at the police department, you're going to go with the solo cup option from somebody's garage? And I could be wrong that they were in the garage, but I feel almost positive that's where he got them. He also says DNA is very forensically stable, as you well know, and it's not really easily contaminated, so I wasn't worried that the cups were not sealed or covered. And then he said, you know, it's not easily contaminated unless you're dealing with radiation or something like that. And he says, and Jackson says, okay, well, what if they get cross-contaminated with somebody else's DNA or something like that? He's like, well, then you just have 2 DNAs and that's better. That just helps. I'm like, okay, if that's what we're going with, okay. Joe says, I so want Jackson to call them beer pong cups just once so I can laugh. Exactly, because that's what they are. They're beer pong cups. Like, come on. I've got one more clip for you guys. We're right at an hour, and then we're going to wrap this puppy up. So now we're going to talk about the evidence bags, because remember, the bags that they used to transport these, there were 6 red Solo cups inside a grocery bag. So imagine like a brown paper grocery bag, and you've got it opened up here, and then you've got 3 cups, there's 6 there. Everything's open. It's not taped shut. It's not closed in any way. It's a grocery bag. Their grocery store, I guess, is called Stop and Shop. We don't have those here, but they call it a Stop and Shop bag. So I'm assuming that that is the name of the grocery store.
Right?
That's correct.
You said on direct examination that this was a brown paper bag, right?
It is. Stop and Shop, I believe.
And you said that Stop and Shop bag is, other than having the words Stop and Shop on it versus evidence on it, basically the one and the same thing.
Same dimensions, made out of the same materials, yes.
Right. But with an evidence bag, you know exactly where it came from and who's handling it.
Not necessarily.
It comes from a manufacturer
Sure.
whose job it is to secure those bags so that they are not mishandled, so they can have some sort of bona fides that they're clean and ready to accept.
I did not realize that he said bona fides. Is that what he said? Oh, you guys, I didn't turn the closed captioning on for you. I'm so sorry. This is the last clip too, so wow, what a... Come on, move up there. There we go. Bona fides. They've got some bona fides, so you know they're clean and ready to go. I did not know he said that.
Evidence. Say, for instance, I don't know, the investigation of a homicide of a police officer.
Okay.
Important stuff, right?
We're not at a homicide of a police officer at this point.
I'm just talking about evidence bags in general. Evidence bags in general. In other words, I'm trying to think about some of the most important investigations around. The manufacturers of those evidence bags manufacture them and send them in a way so that they're bona fides, that the provenance of those bags is maintained, correct, and protected.
That's the way they ship them, yes.
Right. And Canton PD pays extra money for those bags for that very purpose.
I'm sure they do,
You
yes.
mentioned almost tongue-in-cheek, look, except for the price, they're probably pretty close.
Yes.
There's a reason that there's a price difference, right?
What's the reason?
Well, it's not the shop, I can go pay 10 cents.
Yeah.
But that bag's not really good. Who's, where it's been, or who's handling it.
Stop Shop bag's 10 cents. A hoot. Nobody gives a hoot what's been in it or where it's been. What do you mean? What is the reason? What is the reason? He said, except for the price, they're pretty much the same thing. It doesn't say the word evidence on it. It says Stop and Shop. Other than that, you can't tell the difference. It is more expensive though. I don't know why it's more expensive. I can't think of any reasons why it could be.
It's got my milk and my eggs in it, really don't care.
Yeah, I don't know how they price it, because of how they package it. I don't have any knowledge of
Well,
that.
the other one that mentioned the price. I'm
Oh,
just trying to
no.
make a point.
Yeah, I
There's a
agree with
reason.
you on that.
I'm sorry, we're speaking over each other. Okay.
I apologize.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gallagher, you gotta wait for me.
Yep.
There's a reason. My point is there's a reason, right?
Yes.
The evidence bags are more expensive because there is a way they're manufactured and they're taken care of, and Canton PD is willing to pay that extra price, like every other law enforcement agency, because of that, correct? All right. So they're not quite the same, are they?
No.
Sir, you know why You know why they cost more? Because they are sterile, because the manufacturing process ensures that when they get to you, they are sterile and there is no cross-contamination. Is there no training on this? I feel concerned. He's retired, but what has been happening there? And Joe, you're exactly right. Those cups came from a higher ranked superior that lived across the street from the Alberts at 34 Fairview. Now, tomorrow we're going to get into the fact that it wasn't directly across the street, Joe, so please do not get it twisted. It was across the street and kind of over a little bit. So please get your dimensions right. They make a big deal about how it's not directly across the street. It's across the street, sir. But yeah, this is somebody even higher ranked, and he's like, sure, use these solo cups from my garage. And I think the Stop and Shop bag was from somebody's vehicle. They literally had an old grocery bag in their vehicle, and they put blood evidence inside of it. And he doesn't see any problems with this. No, it worked fine. They hold liquids fantastically, terrifically, whatever he said. What is happening? The jury has to be like, what are we doing here? And obviously, we're still fairly early in the trial. We've still got several weeks left. I am open to other evidence coming in. I will be surprised if evidence comes in that is definitive and they just didn't use that evidence in the first trial. But with this case, I would expect anything at this point to happen. But you guys, that is it. That is the end of day 9. Lieutenant Gallagher is back for day 10. He continues his cross, finishes up there, and then we have other witnesses to get to. So definitely make sure that you are subscribing, that you're liking this video, so that all 9 of you who have watched, if you like it, then I'll have 9 likes. Obviously, trying to build up a podcast that you've built on the podcast space and then moving it over to YouTube takes some time. So anything you can do to help with that, subscribe, turn on your notifications, like it, share it, all the YouTube-y things, those are always super helpful. But I am so glad you guys came to hang today, and let me know what you think. What did you think about these 2 days of trial? Are you watching it? What do you know about the case? What are you feeling about it? Do you think that the butts in Canton are different? Because I just don't understand all these butt dials. Their butts are made out of something different than ours. I'm not totally sure what's happening there, but I'll catch you guys on the next one.